Well, thank you very much, Tumi. I know I'm the last person standing between you and some very interesting sessions out there. So I'll try to be as quick as possible. Firstly, let me thank both ministers in their absence. I think they've added quite a bit in terms of our discussions here today. Minister Pravin Gordhan, as well as Minister Davis. But also thank our panelists here, Maria Ramos, thank also Caroline Kenderob, Donald Kaberuka, and our, shall I call you?
And well, the other person.
No. They've got to get it right. The director of ceremonies or the master of ceremonies, or if I can be gender sensitive and say our program director. Ladies and gentlemen, as Tumi has indicated, this is a series in a kind of a very long-term process. Today's exploration of the business of implementing business-inclusive regional economic integration is part of a long-term process. We've had these kinds of roundtables before. Last year, we were here in Davos, and then we're in Cape Town in South Africa, and we had amongst us there persons representing the United Nations, the World Bank, the African Union, as well as the African Development Bank. And some of the insights and the discussions that we've had here have fortunately found their way into their discussions, their internal discussions. And as Caroline has indicated, she also welcomes input so that she can raise it at a forum as well. So we believe that this agenda is one that requires long-term and enduring leadership approach. And I believe that in summarizing, I will not go into the discussions of the panel because I think in eliminating some of those, we find that there are similar themes or recurrent themes, which I will not touch upon. I think the one thing that comes to mind is that we have covered a lot of ground since we were last year. When we were here last year, the free trade area or the discussions around it were still kind of very distant. I think we are at a point where those aspects are now a reality. Timeframes have been set, 3 years, and 2017 as a kind of milestone. So we believe that significant progress has been made. Our role is to ensure that we communicate and we bring it together, source these ideas, and make sure that they find their way as seated in those areas where they are relevant in order to advance the discussions around regional economic integration. Now, political will has been highlighted amongst all the other sessions and even at the table discussions as one of the critical areas that we need to focus on. Some of the areas that came up last year here at Davos as well as in Cape Town, it's encouraging to note that significant progress has been made on those. But let me just hasten to just focus by way of summary on those areas that have come through. In terms of institutions, I think just a summary course, you've highlighted a number of areas around the regulatory environment and the need for harmonization and standardization and champions to drive, obviously, this particular agenda. And I think that speaks to the issue of political will as well. In terms of infrastructure, Zola has indicated by way of the example of NEPAD, the fact that political will is central to any success that can be made there. And we've looked at the lessons that we've also learned, and we realized that there is a need for political arrangements sometimes to precede any other interventions. In terms of the how, clusters of ministers or such as, for instance, the electricity or the energy ministers. So if you have clusters such as those which focus on specific areas, you are bound to make some progress. In terms of agriculture, there was the issue of prioritization as well as sequencing. So take a logical approach to how we cluster or we focus on development and regional economic integration. There was the issue of influence as well coming from the youth. So over and above political will, there's the issue of focusing on the youth and the youth being able to play a role in driving this agenda. Issues such as land governance, and I think the most important issue is the certainty in terms of the environment. For all investors, there's a need for certainty. And lastly, that group which talked about agriculture highlighted innovation. Yeah? The group that spoke on trade and job creation highlighted a key issue that came up in our past discussions, which is entrepreneurship and the realization that in many ways regional economic integration has been driven largely by entrepreneurs and government has actually kind of followed behind, or the regulatory environment has often lagged behind entrepreneurship. So we need to drive that. But there was also the issue, the role of development funding institutions, which was raised, and the need to bring down the cost of doing business. Some of these elements or themes which have been repeated, ladies and gentlemen, I will not go through. So I'll just skip those. There were also issues in the group that discussed intercontinental and BRICS partnership. They've said that encouraging that the elements of regional economic integration are already in place. What we need to do is to transcend narrow sovereign considerations. So in some cases, we need to go beyond seeing certain interventions as hegemonic, but see those as being in the interest of the countries that are involved. Then there were the issue of stronger ties at regional level as well. They said that's very important. Also, we need to deepen the BRICS partnership and look at new funding or investment models. And it is noteworthy, ladies and gentlemen, that in today's session, it seems the operative word is new. So in the new normal, there are a lot of ideas that come through that can hasten economic integration. There was also the issue of political will and leadership. So there are recurring themes that come through this, and we believe that we will capture those in our report. As Tumi has indicated, there will be a report that we will issue post this session, and we'll also ensure that you can actually follow the discussions not only in the African Investor Magazine, who are our partners, but also through African Investor Television. The other elements will be continuation of this dialogue at the WEF Africa, which I believe is in Ethiopia, as well as the WEF in China, and then coming back here in 2013. We will also host, as part of this program, a number of thought leadership research series on CEO briefings, which will encapsulate a lot of the discussions that have gone on amongst us. And we believe that from a marketing point of view, a branding point of view, ladies and gentlemen, that's the contribution that we can make in terms of this discussion. And for our part, as Brand South Africa and our partners, African Investor, we'd like to thank you very much for your contribution and wish you a successful conference here at Davos. Thank you.
In Africa, you can't afford to be without Africa Investor.